The talent of Maz Jobrani as a good writer is evident in the fact that he has successfully cohered his essays, like vignettes, into a narrative that is as engrossing as any good novel. In his observations, he is critically astute and unsparing, but is also always bereft of rancor or false modesty. The humanity of his perspective shines through the sometimes darkly comic moments he captures. Yeats said of one of the great satirists of the English language that his savage indignation lacerated his heart, yet he continued his work to bring forth both laughter and dignity to his audience. Yeats also said that imitate him if you can, he serves human liberty. Please welcome that unmistakable Maz Jobrani, whose tender indignations are both piercing and profoundly human and humanitarian.
I actually had a nicer outfit in mind for tonight. I did, because I know some of the Iranians, Persians were very much, if we go out of the house, you have to dress up. You know, it's not, you know, it's got to be nice. You know, even on a Thursday at a book signing, we just, you know, bring out the meat. You know what I'm saying? So I had a nicer outfit, but coming from Burbank to San Jose today, Southwest Airlines lost my luggage. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll be dressed like this for the next 3 days. And that's it for now. This is the outfit. We'll see what happens. Also, I want to say I'm excited to be here at Stanford, and I actually went to Cal myself. Yes, easy. Let me just say something. I figured if I come and if I can come from Cal and do a talk at Stanford, this is a great way to start peace. This could spread to the Middle East, people. Let's start it here today. Cal and Stanford, let's just hug it out. Thank you all for coming out. This is really overwhelming. This is, my book just came out yesterday, and this is the second book talk I've ever given in my life. I gave one yesterday at UC San Diego, and there was a lot fewer people. So thank you guys for, you beat UC San Diego. I want you to know that right off the bat. So the book that I've written, it's called I'm Not a Terrorist, but I played one on TV. Some of you guys saw it out there. Like I said, it came out yesterday. It's my autobiography told in a funny way. And let me just tell you right off the bat, it just came out yesterday, and already I've had complaints from Iranians and Arabs. Both the white people did. White Americans did not care. They're happy. It's a book. Congratulations. Iranians. One Iranian lady, even Maz, because on the cover, Maz, why are you wearing an Arab keffiyeh? We are not Arabs. Why are you? I go. The whole point is I'm making fun of the way Hollywood stereotypes us. They just, you know, they mishmash it up. They don't care. So that's why I'm wearing the Arab keffiyeh on my head. But Maz, why do you say terrorists? We are not terrorists. I said, yeah, the book clearly says I am not a terrorist. That's what it says. And by the way, I said, it's my story, you know, but the Iranians, Americans have never thought of us as terrorists, Maz. And I said, well, the hostage situation, you know, I was a kid and we got called terrorists. And then she wrote back, she said, Maz, that's water under the bridge. And I wrote back, I said, did you see Argo? It was just 2 years ago. They're talking about it. And then she wrote back again, and finally I said, you know what, I just want you to know, the more you write, the more material you're giving me. So she stopped writing. Thank you. And then I got an email from an Arab guy. Maz, Habibi, why are you wearing the Arab head? You're not Arab. You should not be wearing. I said, okay, you two should talk to each other. And just understand. It's a play on, there used to be, just for the people that might not know, there used to be a commercial for I think for aspirin or something, and this actor would come out and say, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. And then he would tell you to take aspirin. So it's a play on that, And it's also a play on my story. That title itself, I'm not a terrorist, but I played one on TV. It refers to early on in my career. I've now been doing stand-up and acting professionally for about 17 years. But when I first started out, you know, when you first start out in Hollywood, and you're from the Middle East, you know, when they find out you're Iranian or you're Arab or anything of that sort, the types of parts that you get, you know, you tend to die a lot. Yeah, so when they find out you're Middle Eastern, they're like, oh, great, you know, you'll be a terrorist. They're like, why, can I play another part? How about if I play the FBI agent? And they're like, great, you'll be the FBI agent who turns out to be a terrorist. No. So I had to go through that. So that story actually refers to what happened was, and a lot of the younger people here know what I'm talking about. Some of you are still in school, but when you get out of school, you end up in some jobs sometimes that you don't want to be in. And I was at a day job. My day job was working as an assistant in an advertising agency. And I was doing acting I would go on auditions, but my full-time job was this assistant. And I thought to myself, you know what, if I can just find a TV or film job that will allow me to quit the day job, then I can be an actor full-time and go after my dreams. And so what had happened was, I was up for a movie. There was a movie that starred Anthony Hopkins and Chris Rock. And yeah, I don't think anything happened with that movie because that's a weird pairing. But the movie was called Black Sheep. And the story was that Anthony Hopkins is like the head of the CIA, and Chris Rock is a CIA agent. And he dies early in the movie, and they find out that he's got a twin brother who's a baseball card collector in New York. So then they go and they get him to pretend to be his brother and work at the CIA. And so that was the storyline. And in that movie, they're gonna go fight some terrorists. And I auditioned for this part of one of the terrorists, and I got really close. And my agent called me on a Monday. They said, listen, you might get the part. It films in Prague. Is your passport ready? And I was like, yes, yes, I've got an American passport. I can travel. Let's do this. And so by Wednesday, they told me I did not get the part. So I was like, oh man, I was bummed out. And then they called, they go, but you know what, actually? There's a Chuck Norris movie of the week, and you can get that part. And I said, great. So then I got the part in the Chuck Norris movie of the week, and this is before September 11th. I was playing an Afghan terrorist who was going to blow up a building in Chicago. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Hey, you got to take what you can get, man. So again, I was a little divided. I was like, I don't know. And then I thought to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this part, and I will show through my acting why this guy is doing what he's doing. I'm going to try and humanize this terrorist by showing, maybe, because what happens, actors, we have a little trick that we do. We write a biography of our characters before the movie. Like, what happened, how did he end up here, where you see him in the movie, what was his history? So I thought in my history, I'm gonna write that this guy was a young Afghan and living in Afghanistan in the early 80s, and maybe his parents were killed by bombs that were provided by the Americans, which right there, it doesn't even make sense because the Russians were in Afghanistan. So my story was just flimsy from the start. But I thought to myself, you know what, I'm gonna do this, we'll see what happens, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna do this right, I'm gonna be an actor, an actor, you know, a thespian. And I went down to the set and the wardrobe fitting, and I showed up and they said, okay, here's your shirt, here's your pants, here's your turban. And I said, oh, actually, I want to get this right. I just want you to know, Afghans in America, they don't wear turbans. You know, Indian Sikhs wear turbans, Afghans in America do not wear it. Let's get it right. And the wardrobe lady was like, dude, this is a Chuck Norris movie? So I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, listen, do me a favor, talk to the producers, let them know that I've done my research, let's get this right. And she goes, okay, whatever, I'll talk to the producers. So the next day I showed up in my trailer where my wardrobe was, and there's my shirt, and there's my pants, and there's a scarf. And I said, see, I told you if you talk to them, they will see it my way. I said, I'm happy you talk to them. I said, listen, I will gladly be the scarf-wearing terrorist. I have no problem with that. That's kind of a chic thing to do, actually. And she goes, no, that's not a scarf, that's your turban. You just got to wrap it around your head. I felt like an idiot. And it's funny because at the time, I was trying to talk to anybody that would listen. Like, I went on set, the director of the movie was Chuck Norris' son, Eric Norris, and he was younger. He was like closer to my age than Chuck Norris. And I found him before we filmed, and I had this silly turban on. And I go, listen, man, I don't think my character would be wearing a turban. Okay, Afghans in America don't wear turbans. And definitely Afghans in America who are trying to blow up a building are not going to wear turbans. They're trying to lay low, man. And he goes, listen, you know what, I agree with you, but unfortunately my uncle, Aaron Norris, he goes, he's one of the producers and he wants the turban. So the uncle was like, listen, he probably just wanted the turban so that anyone who turns on the TV could be like, that's the bad guy. So that's what I did, and I felt bad, and I did it, and then I came back to Los Angeles, went back to my day job, but I also thought about it. I said, you know what, I don't need to do this, you know, this is stupid. And I was like, you know, it feeds the flame, you know, it's going to add to the flame of all this negative stereotypes that we have out there, Middle Easterners and Arabs and Iranians and Muslims. So I told my agents, no more terrorist parts. And then a little time went by and a TV show 24 called. And they said, we got a terrorist. And I said, no thank you. And then they said, but he changes his mind halfway through the mission. And I was like, ah, the ambivalent terrorist. So now you're talking. Can you wear a scarf by any chance? And so I did that as well. And then that was the last time that I did any terrorist parts. And ever since then, I've stopped even going on auditions for terrorist parts. And I tell people, I say, I don't mind playing cab drivers or falafel store owners or drug store owners. I don't mind that stuff because I know people like that. When I go to New York, when I go to San Francisco, I know people that do those things. But the terrorist thing is where I really get, I've drawn the line and I've said no. Because really, first of all, during my shows around the country, I run into Iranians and Arabs and Muslims and Pakistanis and people from all over the world. And everyone I've seen is just mostly good people. And I've also done shows in the Middle East, and most of those people are good people. And I've never in my life met a terrorist, and I'm not looking to meet one either. But the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the time when you see us represented in the news, it's those stories. And so I said no more of that. So in the book, I talk about that. I also tell other stories. I tell stories of coming to America. I tell stories of starting out in stand-up comedy. I've had a lot of, actually it's been interesting to me because coming from an Iranian background and wanting to be a stand-up comedian, when I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, it was unheard of. Because Iranian parents do not even know what you're talking about. You know, when you tell your Persian parents, like, I want to be a comedian, they're like, well, what? A comedian, they're like, no, a lawyer or doctor is okay, but comedian is not okay. And a lot of it I understand because, you know, they came from Iran to America and they set up shop and they expect you to do something so that when they go to their parties, they can say, my son is a doctor, by the way. Yes, if your daughter is looking for a husband, he's available, and he's a doctor. Did I tell you he's a doctor? He's a doctor. So they really wanted me to be that, but I grew up in America. I grew up in Marin County, in Tiburon, and at a young age, I started watching television, and I fell in love with comedy. And I'll tell you another thing that I realized: when you write a book, and I've said this now to anybody who's out there, if you think that, you know, I want to express myself artistically, I want to write a script, I want to write a blog, I want to write a book. I don't know, maybe I'll do it. You know what? Just get into it. Go for it. Because you'll see, it takes time, but it happens. Like when I first decided to write the book, I was intimidated. Because I'm used to telling jokes, and writing a joke is like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. You know, a book is over 200 pages. I called the editor, I'm like, can I put some pictures in there? It'll be like 150 pages of pictures, you know? So, the experience I had writing a book, it was very therapeutic. It's like going to therapy when you write a book, and it's amazing. Like I feel like so much stuff came back from my childhood, and just understand. Like I remember, first of all, that's another thing that you realize about our culture. Like the American culture is very much into therapy, and like I always say in America, that if you have a problem, go tell your therapist, then tell your family, and then go on Dr. Phil and tell the world. In immigrant cultures, including Iranian cultures, we say, listen, you have no problems. And you go, are you sure? My son is okay, but he's 42, he's living at home still. And he never comes out of his room. If he just finds the right wife, everything will come out. So that's therapy in Iranian culture. So anyway, in the book, I tell the story of deciding to become a stand-up comedian and going to the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And this happened to me over there where I had been, when you first start out, you do what's called open mics, which means you go to like the bars and yogurt shops and coffee shops, and you stand on a little milk carton and milk crate, and you do like 3 minutes of stand-up, and no one's paying attention, and like the barista's making a cappuccino right when you give your punchline, And so you're doing that, and then eventually you want to become what's called a regular at the clubs, the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, the Improv. Those are the famous clubs in Los Angeles. And the one that I started out at was the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And this is a place where, as a kid, someone had told me that, Eddie Murphy, hi, how are you? Welcome, hello, okay, ignore me, I'm not talking to you. Hi, how are you? Welcome. Hi guys, what's happening? Good to see you. Hi, I'm the author of I'm Not a Terrorist. Thanks for coming out. I was just talking about becoming a regular at the Comedy Store. The Comedy Store is a place where, as a kid, when I lived in Marin, I went down to Los Angeles for a trip when I was 13 years old. And we were driving past the Comedy Store, and the people that were hosting us, they said, Eddie Murphy performs there. And I was a big fan of Eddie Murphy's then, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And it was Eddie Murphy, and like Jay Leno, and Letterman, and all the biggest comics, Jim Carrey, everyone went to the Comedy Store. And what's crazy now, 17 years into doing stand-up, the Comedy Store puts the names of all the comedians that have performed there on their walls. And when you go to the front of the Comedy Store, there's a room, it's called the main room. It has 3 different rooms of the Comedy Store. So the main room, if you look above the main room, you see Eddie Murphy's name, and above that you see my name. And it's so cool. I was like, yes! Well, granted, I went and wrote my name up there myself. They didn't put it there, are you kidding me? So, but here's the experience that I talk about in the book. So, becoming a regular at the Comedy Store, what you have to do is, Mitzi Shore, who's Pauly Shore's mother, she's the owner of the Comedy Store. And this lady is a visionary when it comes to comedy, but she's also known to be very eccentric and have some crazy, outlandish ideas from time to time. And I always thank her, like, the Comedy Store really is a place where I grew exponentially as a comedian. But the way you become a regular is, you perform on open mic night, which is on a Sunday night, where the audience, usually there's like 50 audience members, and they're all, foreigners that are just tourists. And they sit through about an hour and a half to 2 hours of the worst comedy ever. There's comedians up there just yelling at the crowd. And after those 2 hours, they say, now you go up and do your 3-minute audition in front of this audience that's shell-shocked. And Mitzi Shore sits in the back of the club, right in the back of the room, in her chair, right next to the exit. And so once you're done, you have to walk past her. And what happens is you go there and you do 3 minutes, and if she likes it, she says, come back next week, do 6 minutes. And then if she likes that, she goes, come back next week and do 10 minutes. And after you've done those 3, after the 10 minutes, when you walk past her, if she lets you walk past and go out the exit, that means you stink, go on, don't think about it, come back in a year. But if she grabs your arm, that means you're going to become a regular. And so I was up there doing my 10 minutes, and I was excited, and I was like, oh my God, I'm almost a regular at this club, it's going to be amazing. And I finish my 10 minutes, and I do well, and I walk off the stage, and I'm walking back, and I'm walking past her, and I'm about to walk past her, and I'm thinking, Mitzi, please grab my arm, grab my arm. And she waits to the last minute, she grabs my arm, and I'm like, oh my God, it's happening! And I'm in my head, I'm like, this is gonna be amazing, I'm gonna be a superstar! And And by the way, my stand-up was horrible, but the thing was that I was like, they didn't have any comedians of Middle Eastern descent at the club. So compared to everyone else that was really bad that night, I was pretty good. So as I'm walking by, she grabs my hand and she pulls me in, and she goes, "You're very funny." That's how she talks, by the way. And at the time, she was older. Right now, Mitzi is like she's gotten a lot older, and she's not doing that well. But actually, at the time, she was already like. She was older, and that's how she talked. She goes, "You're very funny." And I go, "Thank you, Mitzi, thank you." She goes, "I'm gonna make you a regular." And I was like, "Oh my God, it happened!" And then she goes, "Have you thought about wearing the hat?" And I go, "The hat?" She goes, "Yeah, have you thought about wearing the hat and the gown?" I was like, "Hat and the gown?" She goes, "The hat and the gown." I go, "You mean a turban?" She goes, "Yeah, I think you should wear the hat and the gown." And I was like stuck for a moment. I go, "What do I say? Do I say yes and just you know sell myself out and my people and my culture and all my background, or do I say no, Mitzi, I'm not going to wear the turban?" So I turned to her and I said, "Of course, of course. I've been wanting to wear the turban for a long time." So I said yes. And then I walked out of the club, and I walked to the back, and I was going, "What did I just do?" I said, "This is crazy. I just became a regular, but now I gotta wear a turban on stage?" And I knew I was gonna be the laughing stock of the club, and I didn't want to do this at all. And then the thought came to my head, I go, "You know what? She's old." And this was on a Sunday night. I thought maybe by Monday when I call in, she will have forgotten about the turban. So on Monday, you're supposed to call in and talk to the booker of the club, this girl named Corey. And I thought I'd call and they'd forget and life goes on. So I called, and I knew Corey. I called, I go, "Hi Corey." She goes, "Maz, congratulations. I heard you're gonna be a regular." I go, "Yes, it's great." And she goes, "I heard you're gonna wear the outfit." I'm like, "Oh, Corey." I go, "Listen, I really don't want to wear the outfit." And she goes, "Maz, you should wear the outfit." I go, "Corey, what happens if I don't wear the outfit?" She goes, "Do I really have to tell you?" Which basically meant I'm not gonna get any spots at the club. But here's what's interesting. So Corey said, "Listen, Maz, Mitzi is a genius when it comes to this stuff. She really is a visionary, and she's helped a lot of comedians discover their voice and wear their outfits. Like she actually helped Roseanne Barr shop for the clothing that helped her character become who it was." So Mitzi she'd actually struck gold with a lot of people in that way. At the same time, Mitzi had sometimes swung and missed with some people. For example, I came to learn later, there was a guy named Joey Bananas. Joey Bananas was a comedian who used to do a stand-up set, and in his 15-minute stand-up set, at one point he would put on a banana suit, and that was part of the set. Well, Mitzi saw it one night, and she said, "You should be the banana the whole time." And this poor guy agreed to be Joey Bananas, and he hasn't been heard of since. So Mitzi also missed a lot. So I'm sitting here now going, okay, I gotta figure out a way out of this, because I'm not gonna wear a turban on stage. This is ridiculous. So I was trying to figure it out, and I called Corey, the booker, a few times. I said, "Listen, Corey, what if I dressed up like Rudolph Valentino? He was the chic, he was the leading man, chic, and he's kind of a good guy and a lover, and maybe at some point in my act, I'll put on the Rudolph Valentino." And Corey was like, "That's a great idea." And I was like, "Great." And then I hung up and I was like, "I don't even want to do that." So I went back and forth, and then, light bulb moment. I remember hearing in Los Angeles that there had been an Iranian comedian who performed in the Iranian community, and he used to make fun of all the mullahs. And he was at a rally at one point making fun of the mullahs, and some people showed up and they threw rocks at him and they blinded him in one eye. I heard about that. I'm not sure if it happened, but I heard about it. That's all I needed. I called up Corey. I said, "Corey, listen, I gotta tell you something. I was getting ready to wear the turban, but someone told me there's another guy who was wearing a turban, and these people showed up and they threw a rock and they blinded him. So I mean, listen, I could wear the turban, but I'm just telling you, someone might show up at the club and take me out. More importantly, they might take the club out." So Corey said, "Okay, you know what? Let me call you back." And I think she called Mitzi. And then 5 minutes later, my phone call, I got my phone rang again. She goes, "You know what, Maz? Forget need a turban. Just wear something comfortable, you know, like a scarf or something. I was like, great. So I avoided wearing a turban. And that was, again, another good thing in my career. I was very happy about it. And what's funny is, later in my life, in my stand-up career at the Comedy Store, Mitzi Shore was the person who put me and Ahmed and Aaron Cater together. We later became the Axis of Evil Comedy Tour, but before that we were called the Arabian Nights. That's what Mitzi Shore called us. And we would do shows, and Iranians would come up afterwards and be like, Maz, I enjoyed this show a lot, but you know, we are not Arabs. I know, she named the show. She wanted me to wear a turban. It's a good thing I'm not wearing a turban. But here's what's crazy. So later, as my stand-up, I was succeeding in my stand-up, I was sitting with Mitzi one day, just having a conversation. It was great. And again, to myself, I'm thinking, you know, she's older, she's forgotten about our conversations from back then. And at one point in our conversation, she leans in, she goes, you were supposed to wear the turban. And the moral of the story is, Mitzi Shore never forgets. And now, what I'll do is I'll read a segment from here. Is that good? And then we can have a Q&A. So I'm gonna read a little section from my book. This is exciting. I'm not used to reading to people. Last time I read was yesterday, but that's. But before that, it was in school. I hated it. When in school, you remember that? When they would make you do the reading? Ugh. All right. So this is from the book. This tells the story of. When I first moved to America, and we all know when you're a teenager, you want to distance yourself from your parents. And when your parents are immigrants with thick Persian accents, and they're loud, and they always, wherever they go, the car is filled with the whole family, and they're feeding everybody who comes to your house. I mean, you want to distance yourself from these people. So this was my story of living in Tehran, where, by the way, my father had moved and bought a Rolls Royce. Yeah, and this was like around the hostage crisis. And I was like, dude, you're not helping me out here. We're not laying low. Anyway, here's this section here. So this is called I Ran So Far Away. During the Iran hostage crisis, my #1 goal was to lay low, blend in, and find more friends with names like Mark, Brett, Jesse, Steve, and Chip. I didn't want anyone to know I was different, and I sure as hell didn't want the older kids to know that I was Iranian, which even back then equated to terrorist. That would give them an extra body to beat up. I didn't even want anyone to know I existed. The less they knew about me, the better my chances of making it through the school days and getting home without a broken nose. My dad and his Rolls Royce didn't help in this mission at all. My attempt at blending in failed miserably when I was in the 4th grade. I was met with a verbal confrontation by a 6th grader named Jim, who somehow figured out that I was the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Marin County. After all, I had a funny name, beautiful furry eyebrows, strange sounding parents, and a dad who drove a better car than his dad. I had to be involved with the hostage crisis somehow. I looked the part. This 6th grader came up with a clever nickname, calling me an effing Iranian. That's what people called Iranians back then. Effing Iranian. First of all, I explained, it's pronounced Iranian, not Iranian. Second, you're bigger than me, so it's whatever you want it to be. Third, I'm not sure where you heard a rumor that I'm Iranian. I'm not. I'm totally Italian. Ciao. Such were the times that my only recourse was to stand there and take Jim's abuse. The only person who came to my defense was a slightly older black 5th grader. I don't remember his name, but I remember him walking with me and telling me to turn the other cheek and not take it personally. Given his advice, let's call him Martin Luther King Jr. MLK JJ had gone through similar abuse and learned to deal with it. In his case, he was a big kid, so I'm guessing that's why the abuse toward him eventually ceased. I made a mental note to start lifting weights as soon as possible. Who knew how long this hostage thing would last? I either had to grow biceps or learn more words in Italian. You could only fool so many people with ciao, spaghetti, tortellini carbonara. It was a race between my biceps growing and Jim coming up with a clever new insult that other kids would latch onto. Then disaster struck in the form of a flock of seagulls, the 80s band that wrote a song that gave kids plenty of ammunition in their bigotry arsenal. I ran so far away. For any non-Iranians reading this book, it was unfortunate to go right from the hostage crisis to this song. The lyrics had nothing to do with Iran, but kids would drag out the two words to make fun of me by singing, I ran so far away. It was like fingernails on a chalkboard. It's Iran, damn it! Iran! Get your racial barbs right! Oh, look who's the angry Iranian now! And that's from the book.